Hello and welcome to the webinar, Which Business Models May be Subject to the GDPR in Switzerland? Samir Aliyef, the Program Director of the Data Protection Officer Program at the University of St. Gallen, will first talk about the territorial scope of GDPR and business model examples. This short presentation will be followed by an interview with Samir Aliyef and Stefan Weiss, the Global DPO at Swiss Re. After the interview, there will follow a short presentation of our Executive Education Program, Data Protection Officer. During the whole webinar, you are welcome to register your questions online. We will answer your questions after the interview as well as at the end of the webinar. To enter the questions, please use the symbol Q&A at the edge of your computer desktop. I'm Nadia Stauffacher, the Program Manager of the DPO program. Thank you for your time and your interest in this webinar, and I would like to hand over to Samir for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Nadia, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for your time being here today with us online, and we will try to make your time very profitable with our short presentation and interview with Dr. Stefan Weiss from Swiss Re. Also, to answer your questions. This is also important for us to receive interesting questions and challenges. So first of all, I would like to start with our agenda. Nadia, she has already introduced you. Then today we will talk about the territorial scope of GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation of European Union, because it is applicable almost all over the world. How? The question, I'm sure most of you already know, you are familiar with GDPR, its application, but the law says that if you process any personal data, the identifiable data, processing, even storing data in your database is also processing. And it should be part of your activity, and you have to have establishment in European Union. This is first part of the territorial scope. Regardless, your data processing is taking place in EU, in the Union, or outside the Union. The second option is about the data subjects. The people, they live in the European Union, and you process your data as a non-EU company or non-EU establishments. See, as you are offering them goods and services, also targeting them, monitoring their behaviors. So, therefore, I'm not going to talk about theories that you can also find all the theories in Google, all the other sources, but we are going to talk about the exercise, the examples of the business models. There are two main roles in GDPR. First is establishment, second is targeting. Establishment is a little bit technical legal term, which is stable arrangement that exercise real and active business, economic activity in somewhere. Therefore, first you have to identify your business relationship, your establishment. That could be branch, that could be sister company, that could be subsidiary in EU as a Swiss company, the headquarter. So here's the first example that imagine you have, you are a watch manufacturer in Geneva and you have operational office in Paris. That office helps you to exercise your marketing activities and to gain more customers from the European Union. In this case, as a branch, your branch located in Paris is your establishment, your subsidiary in Paris. Therefore, the company, this watch making company, will be subject to the GDPR. So there are two main areas that we need to focus on it when we make an assessment of our relationship with our group companies or branch or distributors. First is the relationship between the company outside of the EU and the company inside the Union. So you have to identify, you have to have assessment, real assessment, that what are the relationship between those two companies. The second, let's say you have a branch, and this branch is involved in revenue increasing of your company, your main company outside of the European Union. So if the company is active for revenue raising, that means it's your establishment in EU. So then we are looking for the link between these two entities. So I'm going to give you another example that imagine that you have an e-commerce company in Zurich, but all your activities, processings made in Switzerland. In the same time, you have an establishment, European establishment in Berlin. That company is implementing a commercial prospection and marketing company to gain the customers for you as an e-commerce company in Zurich. But you do all your processing, all your collection, data collection, cookies, everything in Switzerland. Still, you have a link to this company in Berlin, therefore you are subject to GDPR. And there is also activities that you don't have any link between two entities, or you don't have at all any branch or subsidiary in European Union, but still you could be subject to GDPR. The example is a hotel chain. Let's say that you have a hotel in Zermatt, but you have different languages like Italian, French, German, English, and you try to have some tourists from Europe, maybe not, but you don't have any representation, any sales office in Europe. Still, we can pretend that the company, this hotel, might be subject to GDPR or not. Therefore, we have to look for the activities of the hotel. Are you using cookies? Do you have the telephone, international call center telephone number that you expect call from Germany that people they are going to do reservation in your hotel? The assessment is important to identify that the company is subject to GDPR or not. But then we will do an assessment of processing activities, what you are doing as a processor or controller of personal data. So let's say the pharma company in Denmark, it's established in the European Union, all the activities are there, but they have also the clinical trial office, the activity in Basel. They do some clinical trial here, they collect data, they process it here. But the purpose of this processing and the meaning of this processing is coming from Denmark. Even though all the data subjects are in Switzerland, all the processing, the clinical trials in Switzerland, still you are subject, or the company in Denmark is subject to GDPR. And as a sister company in Switzerland, for example, you are a sister company of this Danish pharma company, still you are subject to GDPR, because the law says doesn't matter if the entity establishment is in the European Union and processing data, either the people living in EU or outside the EU, still the company is subject to GDPR and they have to implement all the data protection regulation. The second option is here that the Italian company is developing a car sharing application, but this application is only used in Tessin, Canton Tessin. So they process data, they collect data of people who is living in Tessin, which is non-EU company territory, but the processing carried out in Italy. Still, you can think that, hey, I'm Italian, and I just processed the people who is not living in EU. Still you are subject, because law says doesn't matter. The European Data Protection Board guidelines says that the territory of the individuals and the citizenships of individuals doesn't matter. If the establishment is in European Union, then you will be subject to GDPR. The second main rule of territorial application of GDPR is targeting. Targeting means you are outside of the European Union, but you have some activities, you just target the people who is living in European Union. So the next example is coming from St. Gallen. Let's say you are a startup in St. Gallen and you have develop the application for tourists who is traveling around the Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, and you monitor them. Once they go somewhere and they do some resonance or comments, then you will monitor them, their behaviors, and you will show them advertising. And that's the territorial scope of this application, is 3 regions. Still, you are offering the people via advertising goods and services. That means you are targeting them, either a Swiss nation or a XYZ. Still, you are subject to GDPR because the people is traveling around in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. The targeting, again, is coming application. For example, I go to Sweden and I need to use my bank account, mobile banking. I just open my Swiss bank mobile application. I do some processing. Of course, bank is seeing it. They target me. They can monitor me what I'm doing. In this case, this Swiss bank is not subject to GDPR because I'm coming from Switzerland. I'm using the Swiss bank's application, and that is only related to my personal activity. That's why this Swiss bank could not be subject to GDPR. The another example, a bank in Zug, but they have customers from Germany. They have, let's say, the 10% of their customers, the database is coming from Germany, but people are living in Zug. They get their salary and all their activities are in Zug. Still, the bank can do some activities, but it's not direct to EU market. The market territory is Zug. You process the European Union's citizens' personal data, but you are not subject to GDPR. You are not subject to any European data protection law because all the activities are taking place in Zug and it's your purpose only to give them service. You are not offering the service in EU territory. The public body, the example is about immigration office. People are coming here in Switzerland to work, to live. Then there is some processing at the immigration office. Immigration office should collect a lot of data and process it to give them permit, leave permit, a work permit. Therefore, this public authority will not be subject to GDPR because it's their area. It is their legal obligation to process the personal data of the people coming from European Union. Also, the company is based in Lausanne, but they have a lot of French employees. The company is processing the French employees' personal data to give them salary, to all the other employment law requirements. In this case, this company is also not subject to GDPR because it's nothing to do with data processing. The main core business of the company is not data processing, but rather than employment law requirements. One of the last example is about our University of St. Gallen. We have master degrees, of course, and we do some assessment when we choose the candidates. Therefore, we collect CVs, resumes, and the photos, also contact details of the people. And these people, the candidates should speak English and German, minimum requirements. But we are not advertising our master program in European Union. We don't want to attract anyone. We don't have an international call center or international office to attract people from European Union, but people, they can apply it. We don't target anyone in EU. Therefore, for this program, office is not subject to GDPR. But what's subject to GDPR is our program, our Data Protection Officer CAS program, because we are executive education, and for us important to have the experts from Switzerland, also from European Union. Therefore, our marketing office is targeting people in Austria and Germany. We target them, we offer them our service, our education service. Therefore, we are subject to GDPR. We have to implement all the requirements that we need to do. Those are my examples. The last but not least, there are some summaries, specific business models that is where the GDPR is applicable. First of all, You have some destination in European Union, as I said, establishment. The second, you have some activities, international activities like tourism or medical health tourism. Then also you have dedicated phone number +41 72 something like this, and you are expecting an international call, so you are subject to GDPR. And also you use some domains name like .de, .eu or something else, then .ch. That means that you are expecting, you are targeting some people in European Union, you want to sell them product or services. Also you have sales office there, establishment. Also you have a lot of comments in your web page. You say Hans Müller from Germany or Marie from France is commenting us, liking us product. Hey, they like your neighbors liking our product, you can also buy for it. Then you're targeting also. Using the currency, Euro currency, also you have free delivery or chargeable delivery service to European Union. It means you try to sell something to European Union, still therefore you are under the GDPR. Also some monitoring activities, which is behavior advertising via the cookies. Yesterday there was a new court case about the cookies, which is very strong, which is very sharp for the business that they have to follow from now. You have an online tracking system. You use some applications that you track all your website visitors. Also, you give some services like personalized diet program, personalized health advising or coaching, life coaching internationally. Also, you cover the European Union. Then you are subject to GDPR. I think that's all. We are on time still, and I would like to invite Stefan Weiss, who is, as we already mentioned, a Global Data Protection Officer at Swissre in Switzerland. And I hope we will have interesting interview with Stefan. Welcome, Stefan. Do you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hello, Samir.
Hello. Welcome to our webinar, and we are pleased to host you today. Thank you very much for your time. In order not to lose the time, I would like to ask my first question, if I'm allowed.
Yes, please.
Oh, thank you very much. The first question is about your international scope. We know that Swissre is operating in a global base, but you have strong presence in Switzerland. So it is interesting us to know your business model and how you differentiate between the different data protection laws if you operate multinational, international.
Yes.
That's it for us.
So thank you for your introduction and also the clarifications on what factors apply to determine whether GDPR needs to be implemented or not. I think you could argue that probably for Swiss Re this exercise is somewhat easier because all of the cases that you explained somehow apply. We are a very diversified global reinsurer. You know, viewers might know us, but for those who don't, you know, we operate around the world and have a presence in more than 50 countries around the world. Obviously, we are very heavily represented and engaged in the European Union and much beyond that in the Americas and Asia as well. But not only with the reinsurance business, which is, you could argue, more of a business-to-business type setup, but also with direct insurance around the world. So, you know, we do have a number of clients, insurance companies, or even insured people, policyholders in the European Union. So there wasn't much of an assessment done to determine whether GDPR does apply or not. It applies certainly, but then you'd ask about how do we differentiate between the different laws even beyond the European Union? or you could argue, how do we deal with the Swiss data protection law as being headquartered in Switzerland? I think here it's really not possible to differentiate and offer a processing environment or services particular to each country. You know, we cannot set up a service for Italy different than it would be for Switzerland or anything like that. Global operations wouldn't allow this. You know, if you look at an IT environment, you pretty much have one cloud. You don't have 50 different clouds with 50 different countries. So we had to decide, how do we apply these different laws around the world? And I think the decision was clear to apply common principles, and most likely the best is to take the strongest law that there is, and GDPR is seen as such. So in a nutshell, we applied all the GDPR principles, and GDPR is our benchmark, as our standard that we work with globally. So all of our documents, policies, standards, our processes, etc., as described, by the way, on our corporate website, apply GDPR, basically.
Great, thank you very much for the explanation, and it's really interesting. As I understood the GDPR for us is an umbrella guidelines for international standards. Is it also applicable in America, North America, South America, if you have a presence there, or in Asia, or you follow HIPAA or other regulation in North America and Asia?
Yeah, maybe I'll take one case that may be simpler. So
Great.
I had some discussions when we implemented GDPR. And can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah, okay. When we implemented GDPR last year, I had some discussions with colleagues in the US who argued on in a case of HR in recruiting, the US employees, the US line managers wouldn't want to follow European law. You know, they were just opposed. They said, well, you know, we're in the US, we have US law, and you know, just go away with your European law. Here it was clear that again, in this global environment, the line manager of employees that are located in Europe might sit in the US, happen to sit in the US, might have to review their performance, might recruit them, might interview them. So, you know, they cannot say just because they sit in the US that GDPR doesn't apply. If they are dealing with employees in Europe, they would have to. So here the case is clear that certain aspects of GDPR also apply to the US market, to our US operations, I would say. But of course, if you know, if we'd say the principles of GDPR apply also in the US, it doesn't mean that all rights and everything that is included in GDPR, for example, portability of data, etc., would apply if a US policyholder of an insurance would come to us and say, you know, I want all my data to be deported to me, deleted, or what have you. That needs to be applied according to local law. And there's certain principles existing already today in the US that also go in line with GDPR principles, such as giving rights to people to access their information and a number of other things. So I think there's common denominator, but yes, in certain cases, when people want to exercise their rights, when these things apply, you would have to look at the local law as well. So you need both, you know, both views, so to speak.
Great, thank you very much for detailed explanation. I have second question, but I think I got most of the answer already for the second question. It's interesting for us to know your data protection compliance program when the GDPR introduced last year? And is there any impact on your business in Switzerland? What did you change? What's not changed yet, or what's your future plan?
Yeah. I think one thing that I need to say up front is that even back in 2016, when the GDPR was first communicated and published, it was already clear that the Swiss data protection law is likely to be revised at some point. It still isn't, but it looks like soon it will be done, and obviously, as we expected already then, it will be aligned to a great degree to GDPR. So from our assessment back in 2016, when we knew what GDPR was bringing to us, we did a gap analysis, and we kind of treated Switzerland as if the law, the Swiss law, would have already been changed by the time GDPR comes into place or soon thereafter. We performed the gap analysis in looking at what we had at the time in 2016 versus GDPR, and determined what is new, what is coming new, what is it that we don't have. That's an important aspect, because obviously most companies around Europe, including Switzerland, had data protection in place for many, many years. So it's not like we had nothing. So we identified some gaps, we identified some processes, some policy elements perhaps, and things that we had to revise or had to introduce completely new. I give some examples. Data Protection Act, as it is defined in GDPR, we didn't have in place. We had some type of assessment in place, but we had to make it more firm and more clear in a documented way. Perfect. And we also had to think about how can we apply breach notification requirements. So we've implemented a tool there, and then we basically designed everything that we had to do new in 2017 and implemented all of that in 2018. So that was the way we approached this.
But I believe that there is no end point in privacy. So of course, all the companies as Swiss Re, they are compliant. They will always update their system and always follow the best practice in market by default.
Yes.
Yes.
Was that a question? Or?
No, just it was a comment from my side.
Yeah. I mean, that's I think a continuation here. You know, sometimes it's a bit funny that there was such a hype during, I would say, 2017 and 2018. Everybody thinking that, you know, GDPR is like massively impacting the whole world, basically. And then when May 25th came about, after that, everybody thought, okay, now that's done. We're done. You know, we're done with GDPR. So one of our attempts was to rename and go back to the term data protection and not call this GDPR anymore. And also make clear that everyone understands this is a continuous effort. So we're never going to be done. Particularly when you look at different countries around the world, in Asia and also in the Americas, including the US now, that bring in laws that are very much aligned to GDPR.
Great. And also, I believe that the first wave is done, that the process, all the policies, guidelines, and the second wave is here, the process, how we will roll out our policy, how we will implement it, and what are the impacts, reflections we will receive it. So I think the companies, especially in Switzerland, they are in second phase to implement it, either manually or through the help of the technology. But let's see what's coming in the near future. Also, the revision of the Swiss Data Protection Act. It's very interesting for us to follow and update our participants, our auditorium for that. So I think that the third question is about the complexity of the different data protection laws. I believe you already explained, but if you have any comments, of course, it will be our pleasure to hear that. About the complexity and the law introduced, and then the future also different jurisdictions like Japan or India or China. I don't know you have establishment in China or not, but it is something interesting, the process going there, all the Cybersecurity Act and the future Data Protection Acts and different surveillances. It's interesting to know if you have an establishment there and what are the policy for you for China.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting one because I think if you purely take this environment from a legal perspective, take all the different laws, more than 100 laws around the world, and then you kind of determine which of the rules, the articles in each law apply to you and how do you implement this, you're not gonna be able to manage this. So on the other hand, from an operational perspective, I think it only works from an operational perspective. So I can give you an example. I think it was in 2017 when Japan revised their Privacy Act and aligned it to GDPR. And you could have taken this Japanese law and say, okay, now we are looking at each article and thinking, okay, what do we have to implement for Japan? Obviously, our operations is globally connected. So yes, there's Japanese data going into this environment and there's Swiss data going in and so on, but you'd have to find a common denominator. So basically we looked through the revised Japanese Privacy Act and really only highlighted those things that are coming in new and that are, outside what we know from GDPR. And once we've done that, we realized there isn't really anything that is out of the norm. So if you take GDPR as the norm and you'd say, what else is there in this act in Japan that we don't know from GDPR, then you don't find really anything. I mean, there might be some specifics on what to report to the local data protection authority or regulator, but other than that, the principles are the same, etc. So, and that's how we would handle this in China. This is how we handle it currently in an assessment that we do against the California the California Consumer Privacy Act, or any such matters in Brazil, for example. The same thing applies. What is outside the norm? And provided that GDPR is our norm and we have implemented those aspects already, but then you can only focus on what is so specific. And there's a lot of hype also about China, but if you look at the types of requirements that they bring in, they are very similar than what we know from GDPR. The question obviously is about the enforcement environment, and that's a different deal. But if you look at it from an operational aspect, what do we need to do? Take one kind of benchmark, one standard. I would propose GDPR. It is accepted now, very much globally, and is implemented one by one in many countries. Take that as your benchmark and benchmark yourself against it, and have one operational rule set implemented.
Good. Thank you very much, Stefan. And I would like to ask Nadia if we have any question to Stefan from our auditorium.
We didn't receive any questions.
Yes.
So you may start with the information about the GDPR program.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Stefan, for your time. Do you have any other comments or?
No, that's fine. I'll stay on in case something else comes up, but I'll mute my phone.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, our auditorium, that you are still with us. It's our pleasure. It will take just several minutes to introduce our Data Protection Officer program, which we launched last year, and we will start our program in 11th of November. The Data Protection CAS program we have, it's 15 days full program split in 5 months. It contains 3 modules. You can also attend first module if you like. You can continue second or third modules, or we have also option to come in second module. And we are the CAS program in Switzerland, only CAS program in Switzerland that we have study mission to Brussels. After the modules, we will take our participants to Brussels, which is the heart of European Union and heart of the privacy negotiation. There we will have very actual roundtable discussions and experiment for our participants. The program will take place first module in the executive campus of St. Gallen University in St. Gallen, and the other 2 modules will take place in Zurich, mainly Friday and Saturdays. Then we will have also some optional programs after the day. We will invite you, our participants, to different organizations in Zurich to learn from their implementation or advice to the business in Switzerland. So our program contains 3 different sectors. First, privacy law, then privacy management in your organization. Also, we will teach our participants about basics of information security, data security, also cyber security. What does it mean for one data protection officer? What's the cyber security basics or information securities that will help you to communicate all the stuff with information security office in your company, or to change the information from IT to management. Also, we have best experts, I could say. Stefan is also one of our experts, speakers. We invite experts from different industry and from different countries, not only in Switzerland. We have experts from Germany, from Austria, Netherlands, Norway, France, UK, and in different backgrounds, different industries will help our participants to learn their know-hows, best practice, and the case studies. At the end of the course, you will receive certifications of advanced studies, which is 10 credits also. It will be helpful if you have another study. That's all from now. And I would like to answer your questions if you send some of them. Nadia, please, could you join us?
Hello again. So far, we haven't received any questions.
That's a surprise for us. It's first time.
Yes. So if you have any more questions after the webinar, we are more than happy to answer them afterwards. And you will anyway receive the slides. So if you have any questions, just let us know.
Also, you will receive questionnaire from Nadia. We will be pleased if you can give us some feedbacks about our presentation, also our program. It will be our pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time, and goodbye.
Goodbye.